to online classes.
Online.
So thank you for joining us. By way of introduction, our lecturer today is Mr. Jaye Gaskia. Or when I hand over to you, you will tell us the other name. But for now, I will.
I don't have other names.
I will introduce you as Mr. Jaye Gaskia.
Yes, so.
Mr. Gaskia is a public affairs and political commentator and analyst. Is also a governance and development strategist and specialist with skills, competencies, and expertise in conflict transformation, peace building, peace and security, participatory governance and development, community mobilizing and empowerment, gender empowerment, youth empowerment, gender equality, design and implementation of strategic and operational plan frameworks. Listen very well, oh, you might have to consult him after today's lecture.
I really pity you.
Capacity building and mentoring, relationship building, mass organizing and mobilizing. He is also an activist and active citizen, a delegate to the 2014 National Conference in Nigeria, representing civil society. He has worked at the most senior management technical positions in at least 3 international development agencies in Nigeria, and currently chairs and co-chairs top-notch civil society and multi-stakeholder networks and platforms. Jaye Gaskia is an original thinker, organic intellectual. Please, when you take over, you will explain some of this for us. A public academic and a people's scholar. That is our lecturer today. He is one of my big brothers in the civil society organizations. He used to be in ERA before he became and joined most of these international development organizations. I see him as one of my mentors because I learned a lot from Nambantong, Oronto Douglas, Dr. and Dr. Godwin Frank, those days in ERA when they were running a People's Democratic Liberation PDLP at ERA office at 13 Ogudana. Those were the people that used to inspire us and encourage us to continue to agitate and lend our voices to the injustice that is happening in our society. So today, Comrade Jaye Gaskia is going to take the lecture on leadership and organization. So please, for those of us in the physical hall, with a round of applause, welcome our lecturer. So, Jaye, over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, compatriots. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, for first of all, I think actually for making your platform available for this interaction, and also for the very warm and some people will say biased introduction, though. But thank you, Eric, and particularly to the students. Congratulations to you for being part of this process. There is no one that has taken part in the leadership schools. The main one, which is in its 15th year now, in its 7th year now with 2 classes and the 15th session. And this, the centers around the country that are getting ready, no one that has taken part that have not had their lives impacted in terms of some significant improvement in the quality of their humanity. So, once again, thank you. We are talking about leadership and organization today. If we were together, I would be projecting, but I sent some notes. Yeah, it's there. Okay, I sent notes. So the way I want to look at it is that I want to look at, and that's the way my mother taught me. By the way, my mother was a teacher, a class teacher, and then an headmistress, and my father was also a principal. So I'm the product of teachers. So what they taught me is that when you have a topic like this, you split it into its component parts, and then you recombine them. And this is what I'm going to do. So my approach would be to look at leadership, and then to look at the concepts of leadership and the concepts of and the concept of organization, and then to look at the nexus between leadership and organization. Why leadership is necessary for effective organization, and why without organization there can be no leadership. So basically, that's the session approach. So let's then move forward. And as we go forward, perhaps I would respond to some of the things that Evan said. What is leadership and who is a leader, really? I would have, I wish this were a physical session, because I would really have loved some form of interaction. I like walking around and looking into people's eyes to see whether they're actually getting what I'm saying or not. But let's go ahead. So what is leadership and who is a leader? And the two concepts are different. And I want you to please take note of this. They are different. Leadership is, it's the quality. It's much broader than a leader. And I think that it's important for us to note that. And I have tried to give some expressions to what leadership is. And I said that, so the very first thing about leadership is that it's simply about being a leader. So what a leader exercises is leadership. So that's at the basic foundational level. So that is that. But in a more qualitative manner, it's the ability and the capacity to lead or to be a leader. So, so leadership is much more qualitative and about capacity. And so you can say it's the quality and the capacity that a leader should have, and it's that ability to lead. So in a functional sense, leadership is about coping with change, and it is about coping with transformation. Because in any case, why do we need leadership? Why do we need leaders? It's to organize, to move from point A to point B, to develop a product or a service, you know, which requires also movement from point A to point B to point C to point D. So yeah, and in that context, in that functional context, it is really about coping with change, because all of these, there would definitely be changes that will be occurring, and so on and so forth. So for example, you look at our country today, and look at the world globally today, and look at the context of COVID-19. In MM's introduction, she said that we have to migrate to virtual classes. Now that is coping with change and coping with transformation, you know, and transition, because usually when you are coping with a change, there will be some transformation. And if you look at the world today, we can begin to rate leaders and leaderships of countries and businesses with the way and manner in which they have coped with the changes brought about by COVID-19, and the way and manner in which they are coping with the transformations, the necessary transformations that these changes are bringing. So the world of work is changing globally, okay? Meetings and trainings and schooling is being held online. These are real transformations that are taking place. And such processes require, you know, leadership to push through those reforms. If you've been listening and watching the news, you would see the widespread criticism of, for example, Donald Trump's handling of the COVID COVID-19 epidemic, and people have called it a failure of leadership. When I was growing up, that period that was talking about under the military, we used to have a term that we call it going to Afghanistan. So if you want to criticize your government because it was a military government and you could be picked up, you will go and criticize Afghanistan or criticize another military regime somewhere else, but you're actually talking about your government. So in essence, what I'm saying is that if we look at the COVID-19 response in the country too, we can also begin to see where there are gaps in terms of leadership at national level, at subnational level, and the rest of that. So if leadership is capacity and is the quality of what is to be done, so who is a leader and what is a leader? And a leader is someone who is a pathfinder. And I'm not talking about the SUV that is called pathfinder. So is a pathfinder is somebody who goes ahead of the others. But in order to be able to go ahead of others, but in order to be able to show the way, in order to be able to direct, to give direction on the path to be taken, then such a person must also possess some other qualities, which we shall talk about later. But essentially, it means that a leader is a guide. That's the most basic thing. A leader is supposed to guide. So a leader, and that's why there's a difference between leadership and rulership. You can rule, you can even govern without being a leader. And I hope we understand that. So a leader is essentially a guide and someone that provides guidance and direction. And so now let's look at what are the attributes of leadership? Because we have said who a leader is. We have said what leadership is. And I want to also be, well, leadership can be because you are appointed, okay? But there has to be certain qualities in you before you are appointed. Leadership can also be because you are elected. But there also has to be certain qualities, or people need to look at certain qualities in order to do that selection or to do that election, to make that decision. So in terms of the attributes of leadership, which you can also say would be some of the characteristics of a leader, a leadership must be able to set the direction, to set an agenda. So we call it direction setting. A leader or a leadership in providing guidance must be able to set an agenda. And so, when you are planning, for example, when you want to do advocacy as NGOs, as civil society, you talk about agenda setting, that you want to set the agenda. That means you want to provide leadership on that particular issue. That's why you are setting the agenda. So a leadership must be such that it can provide, it can set an agenda. Now, part of the attributes of leadership is also that it's that one that involves aligning people. Now, what is this? You as a leader and with leadership, you have a diverse array, of components that you are leading, of departments that you are leading, of interest groups that you are providing leadership for. So the ability to align them, the ability to bring all of this together, to bring everybody together, every interest together, to make them find their interest in the agenda that is being set is also one of the major attributes of leadership. We must be able to align people. So leadership involves aligning people. A leader needs to be firm, but a leader needs to be extremely very flexible as well. And that's very important. If we move on to the next slide, a third attribute of leadership is that it must be motivational. Leadership must motivate. It must inspire. It must encourage. It must make energize people so that they can aspire towards a certain goal to achieve some certain end. So an effective and successful leadership must be such that it can motivate. Okay, because you can align. For example, you can be good at aligning, at bringing interests together, put people together, at agenda setting, at identifying what needs to be done. But leadership also needs to have the attribute of being able to motivate, so that the process will not look bland, will not look dead, so that people can actually have, a living interest in the and purpose in the interest in the organization, in the process. Another attribute of leadership is, and this for me is the most important attribute of leadership. So a leader must be must be able to set agenda. A leader must be able to bring people together and bring interests together. A leadership must be able to motivate. But more importantly, leadership must be able to create a culture of leadership. Because without being able to create a culture of leadership, then leadership succession becomes difficult or nearly impossible. And so no matter how good and how effective a leadership has been, if there can be no leadership succession, then it means that everything that has been done is going to collapse. Okay? So creating a culture of leadership means building, supporting followers and supporting members and building their capacity to also be able to exercise leadership. So it means that you are institutionalizing leadership within the organization, within the family. So let's take a family as an example. Okay, I mean, parents are expected to necessarily provide leadership, but you have, for example, a family with 4 kids. Then you expect maybe the first child to be able to also provide leadership, and so on and so forth. So you must create a system that enables and allows, a mechanism and a system that enables and allows, people to be able to learn how to lead, the act of leadership. That's what I call creating a culture of leadership. Because you know what? The sole end and purpose of leadership is to ensure that everybody should be able to exercise leadership, to make sure that no one single leader is indispensable. That's the sole purpose of leadership. Bottom line. So if you look across the world, and let's use, you see organizations get to a point where they say, oh, we need to really change our leadership now because these leaders have become they've stayed too long. And so on and so forth. And countries, politically, you look at countries. If you ask me, one of my biggest worries in Africa today, which is also one of the biggest success stories of Africa, is Rwanda. But for me, it's also one of my biggest worries, because you have a strong man who is a leader. He's a good leader, but he's a strong man leader. And you now wonder that after his demise, what will happen to that country? So that's why leadership has to be about creating a culture of leadership. And it leads us into the very next thing, which is the fact that leadership is a collective attribute of individuals who are leaders and who are exercising leadership. They are working together, they are coordinating together. So leadership is a collective attribute. It's not an attribute of an individual. It is an attribute that is shared within a collective. And I end that part by saying that strong leadership is a prerequisite for strong institutions. You know this debate about a strong leader or strong institutions. It's neither here nor there. That debate looks like that debate about the chicken or the egg, which came first. We can debate it, continue to debate it. So some will say that without the chicken, you will not have been able to lay the egg. But then again, too, the egg is also where the chicken developed from. So there is really no either or mutual exclusion in this. I prefer to see it as mutual inclusivity, meaning that they are mutually dependent. So in order for you to have strong institutions, you must have strong leadership. Not strong leader, but strong leadership. In order for you to have strong institutions. And leadership itself is an institution. Leadership is one of the institutions. where you have created a culture of leadership. So what are the characters of a leader? So, because let's look at, surmising from the attributes of leadership, let's see whether we can then surmise what the characters of a leader should be. And this is about everybody who is exercising leadership at whatever level. So what should be the characteristics of a leader? The first thing is that if we say that leadership is about agenda setting, about leading the way, about finding the direction, about path finding, then it means that a leader must be a visionary. A visionary is somebody who can imagine the future, who can imagine that, okay, this is where we are now, this is what we want to do, and if we do this, this is what we get, and imagine what that future will look like. So a leader must be a visionary. It is no use. One of the biggest dangers is to have people in leadership positions who lack vision, who lack the capacity to envision, who cannot see the trend of things, and who cannot see 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ahead. But a leader must also be approachable, because of course, who are you leading and what are you leading if you are not approachable? Approachability is one of the characteristics of a leader. A leader must be approachable, because that is how others can learn from the leader. If the leader is not approachable, it will be difficult for people to learn from the leader. A leader must be simple and must be humble. So when I say simple, it means that there should be no hairs about this idea in our country that we mystify leadership. It comes from when you didn't need any attribute to be a leader, because leadership is inherited. It comes from that past. And globally, the monarchy, you really don't have to have any qualities, but you inherit leadership. That's why you have those airs of big manism and big womanism and this thing around leaders. But a leader is supposed to be simple, because if you are not simple, you cannot be approachable. A leader must be humble. If you are not humble, you cannot be approachable. And being humble also means the ability and the capacity to know when you are wrong and accept when you are wrong, and to be able to learn from those that you are leading. Without humility, you cannot learn. A leader must also be a knowledge producer and disseminator. So if a leader must be able to envision, to see the future, then it means that the leader must be able to develop knowledge about how to get to that future point, must be able to develop knowledge. So, for example, in a business, people came up with an idea. Look at the way Facebook started or Twitter started. People came up with an idea. They had a vision, but they also had to produce knowledge, which became the basis of the type of organization that they wanted, and the basis of running that organization. And as a leader, and if we accept the necessity to develop a culture of leadership, then a leader must not just be a knowledge producer, must also be a knowledge disseminator. That means a leader must also be able to disseminate knowledge that has been produced. A leader must be an educator. And I put here that a teacher who is also teachable. There are people who think that they have reached the zenith of knowledge. A good leader has not reached the zenith of knowledge. A good leader will be such that is able to teach, but also to be taught. And if we say that leadership is about motivating, then a good leader must be motivational and inspirational. That means that you must be able to draw the best instincts of people, not their worst. You must be able to draw on their best instincts, not on their fears. You must be able to draw on what propels them, not on what holds them back. So same with business, same with in politics and everywhere else. Leadership must be such that, and a leader must be one that can draw out the good parts of a person, the strengths of a person, and not hammer on the weaknesses. Yes, we want to correct weaknesses and gaps, but the purpose of identifying weaknesses and gaps is to correct them, not to turn them into obstacles, not to say that you begin to use that to hold people down. And it is in that context that a leader must also be empowering. If a leader is going to disseminate knowledge and is going to teach, that leader must be one that is empowering. And a final characteristics of leadership, coordination and guidance. Because really, what is a leader doing? A leader is coordinating, is guiding. If you are guiding, you must be able to coordinate. So that the ability to coordinate, to bring different interests together, to convince people to reach a consensus and follow a common path. A leader must have that characteristics, coordination and guidance. So let's now go to the second concept. We finished with the concept of leadership. Let's go to the second concept, which is organization. And so for this session, I'm looking at organization in the sense of a structure, in the sense of a structure that has been put together to help to achieve, a certain goal, a certain purpose, a certain objective. So that's an organization, a structure. And that's why you have all those three different dimensions and of definition of organization that I've given there. You need to put things together. But you need a structure to accomplish that. And that's what an organization is. What are the types of organizations that we have? And there are quite a variety of organizations that we have, ranging from legal to illegal, formal to informal, different types of organizations. So legal, that because they have a legal existence, they are registered with government or with an authority somewhere. Extra legal, they are not illegal, they don't require, registration. Illegal, they have been outlawed, so you can have organizations that have been outlawed, illegal, even businesses. During the Great Depression in the US in the 1920s and 30s, the production of alcohol was outlawed. So even businesses that were brewing alcohol became illegal organizations. So you can have, for example, illegal mining of resources that we have in Nigeria, for example, now. But basically, also, and then you can also have organizations that are hybrid in terms of the sphere where they operate, public as well as private. Okay, so they can be private organizations, they can be public organizations, public in the sense that public institutions, governments, so MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies. But you can also have some that are hybrid, that are both private, but also, for example, receive subvention from government. And I'm going to, well, it may sound like a joke, but the reality is that, for example, our discos and our gencos are supposed to be private businesses and organizations, but in the real sense of the word today, they are actually hybrid organizations. So they are privately owned, but they survive through subventions and interventions from government. 1.7 trillion naira, for example, has been spent on the discos and gencos in the last 5 years from public purse to help them survive. You can also have organizations that are voluntary, or that you are required to be part of them by law. So, for example, the NYSC is an organization, but then you are required by law to be part of it. But you also have voluntary organizations like Boy Scouts, that, for example, that you join because you want to join them. Then the last point is very important. Organizations can be centralized or decentralized. They can be democratic or autocratic, and they can be hierarchical or diffuse. Now, what do we mean by these dichotomies? A centralized organization is one that is a monolithic. It's just you have one command center. So a good example of a centralized organization would be, for example, the armed forces, the army. Very centralized command structure, one point. A decentralized organization is one where the levels of authority are decentralized and different levels can make certain decisions within their own competence. So, and that's the way most businesses are. You know, the more successful businesses are those that are really decentralized. Now, an organization can also be democratic or autocratic. So democratic in the sense that decision making is by via consultation of the different organs and may also include voting and all of that. But it may also be autocratic where just one source makes the decision and that decision is enforced and imposed on all the others. Then it can also be an organization can also be hierarchical or diffuse. Hierarchical is in the sense that you have layers of authority and everybody must respect the next one. So some professions are very hierarchical, for example, in the sense of the fact that you have seniors in the profession and by the culture and practice of those professions, you cannot antagonize your seniors, for example. So, and in a business too, you can also have that kind of hierarchical something where subordinate managers cannot question their supervising or superior managers. But in a diffuse setting, while recognizing your superiors and your subordinates, you can actually question them and so on and so forth. If you are looking at this now, you will see that there is a close relationship between being centralized, being autocratic, and being hierarchical. Just like there is a close relationship between being decentralized, being democratic, and being diffuse. What are the characteristics of an organization? And I'm looking at 4 primary characteristics of an organization here. An organization must have a goal. And that goal is encapsulated in their vision, but also in their strategic plan, in their business plan, in their manifesto, for example, if it's a political party. So an organization must have a goal. That's one thing. The second is that an organization must have leadership. You cannot organize without leadership. So an organization must have leadership. And you must have a structure for that leadership in terms of how the leadership is structured and what levels of authority those, in terms of decision making, the different leadership levels would have. Because in order to give direction and guidance, there must be leadership. Some people must be saddled with that responsibility. An organization must also have a mission that must have a defined purpose. So you have a goal, but you have a mission of how to achieve your goal. So if you have a mission, you have a vision, you have a strategy, an organizational strategic plan, you have a political party manifesto, then you must have an operational plan, an implementation plan, how you want to achieve that. And that is the action that the organization engages in, that is involved in. So you want to produce or you want to manufacture certain goods and services. How do you do this? What are the machineries that you will need, and so on and so forth? That's involved in that area. And then finally, an organization must have an effective communication system, must be able to communicate amongst its members communicate within itself amongst its members, but also communicate itself to the wider audience and the wider society. So if, in order to produce a good and service, an organization must have an effective internal communication system, which is part that will be part of how everybody will know what to do and their role in the production process. But in order to also make their goods and services available, or in order to, if it's a campaigning organization, in order to achieve the goal of your campaign, you must also be able to then communicate effectively with your target audience, with the wider society, who basically are the ones that you are serving, whether you are producing a good, a service, or whether you are advocating for a change in society. It's that wider audience that you really want to influence. So you must be able to also communicate with that wider audience, just as you communicate within yourself. So the nexus, the leadership nexus. Now, what's the nexus now between leadership and organization? How do you, I mean, and we have said that you cannot have an organization without leadership. You cannot have an organization without leadership. So we can also, another way of saying this is to say that the most effective organizations the most successful organizations are the ones with the most effective leaderships. You can't have an organization without leadership. And the most successful organizations are also the one with the most effective leaderships. And we have said earlier on that a leader can be appointed. So in a business, for example, people apply for positions and a leader can be appointed, but it will be on the basis of certain criteria. A leader can also be elected. In mass organizations, in campaigns, for example, leaders they emerge through election or through a selection process that involves consultation with the membership. Next slide. Within informal, and the difference between formal and informal organizations is that within informal organizations, leadership, leaders would normally emerge within the structure of the informal organization. So leaders or leadership would probably evolve from within and would be an internal process. With formal organizations, you can appoint a head or a leader from outside of the organization, from somewhere else, as long as they meet those criteria. But I think that the most significant thing that we really need to understand is that leaders are required to help build, guide, coordinate organizations. And it is in that sense that you can't have an organization without leadership. And I believe that that is actually the last slide. So I'm now open for questions, comments, and contributions. Hello? Hello?
Yes, we are hearing you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you too.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah. So please, now we are open for questions, for comments, and contributions. And while he was talking, I noticed that somebody's hand was up. I don't know whether it's a mistake or the person really have something to contribute. So we can start with that person.
Add something to, yeah.
Techno 2F. Is the person still there?
I think it was a mistake.
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right. So
Okay,
questions
so
generally.
questions and contributions. Yes, Galaxy A21. Please unmute yourself and speak. And the class governor, after Galaxy A21, I'll recognize you to speak. So I have Galaxy A21, class governor, and Mr. Roland. Can we take it in that order? Please, whoever is Galaxy A21, unmute yourself and speak.
Good afternoon, ma.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, my able teacher, lecturer. My question goes thus. Why?
Introduce yourself.
Okay,
first.
I am Rose Kukan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. My question goes thus. Why are we finding it? Should I go on?
Yes, go on. Go on.
Okay. Why are we finding it difficult today to find leaders that are simple and humble and approachable? These three characteristics of leaders have given me problem over time. I have been under many leaders, and I cannot find this character trait in leaders. They are neither simple, they are neither humble, and they are neither approachable. There is a high level of ego because of their position. So I don't know why. I need a clarification.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Rose. Thank you. Okay.
I think we will take all the questions.
Absolutely, yes. So that I would then respond to them.
So class governor, unmute yourself and speak. Unmute yourself and speak, Madam Christie.
Hello.
Lecturer for today.
Thank you, ma'am.
I appreciate your wonderful lecture, and I want to ask, just in line with what Rose Kukan asked, we find out that in our society today, when a leader is humble, when a leader is simple, she's being mistaken to, her meekness is being mistaken, or his meekness is being mistaken and highly abused. The perception is that because you are too simple, you are approachable, you are humble, then you don't know what you are doing. So how do you work on this point?
Okay.
Okay, are you done? Roland. After Roland, Osaki.
Yes.
Roland.
Thank you very much, distinguished guest lecturer.
Thank you
for today. It's amazing listening to you sharing some of your technical knowledge and also theoretical knowledge. I want to make few interjections on what you have said so far.
Okay.
Now, we are looking at leadership, and as students that are in the leadership school, I'm looking at the areas of personality that influences leadership negatively. You know, when a person has issue with or is having issue with temperament, you know what happens to leadership? Yes. I happen to be one of those persons who gets easily is actually crystal clear. Maybe in a group of 10, the board has come to make a decision, and 8 persons are giving go ahead, and the other 2 persons are no, we want to boycott the process. Not like Roland, that. You as a leader, that's because
Can we take Osaki and we take
Roland is
Dapa
still talking. No?
before the lecturer will respond? Osaki,
I'm not done, ma.
and then
Roland
we
is
take
still
Emmanuel
talking. No?
Dapa. And we hand over to the. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are hearing you. Roland is still talking.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
So,
Roland.
as I was saying, yes, as I was saying, sir. So I feel that there is a need for us to look at the psychological aspect of leadership management, which I believe is a very key factor because the leadership deals with the human being. And human being is a formation of your thinking, your psychological state of mind. So when we talk about this issue of leadership and yes, drivers of leadership, we look at trying to diagnose the areas of the mental state of whoever is the leader. Because when you're able to apprehend the shortcomings of somebody in a mental level, you'll be able to also look at what leadership position that befits them, or what kind of leadership position can they, operate on. So I also feel that there's a need for us to draw, lines on that. Then one other aspect I also feel that is very important, because in the African society, Nigerian society at its may, there are
We are breaking. I hope you are here. So I hope somebody is hearing that so that you can, you can relate it to me. I'm not hearing what he's saying.
I'm not hearing his voice again.
Again, yeah, he's breaking.
Roland, are you still talking? I'm not hearing Ronald's voice.
I can't hear him. Yeah, I can't hear him too.
Maybe you can put the remaining parts in the chat.
In the chat, exactly. Yeah. Okay.
Osaki, I have seen your question in the Q&A. I don't know whether you still have something to say. Otherwise, we move on to Emmanuel Dapa before we hand
what was his question?
The question in the chats, one person said, is someone who does not go through this leadership school, can the person be allowed to lead? Secondly, how do you organize your followers to respond to your leadership in the organization?
Okay.
So,
is there one?
Someone are you asking a question?
Okay, yes, maybe I should, yeah.
I think you can go ahead and respond to those acts.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, all of you. So let me begin from the end. Particularly that question around does someone who have not gone through a leadership school like this, can such a person lead? I think it speaks to the question, to the issue when I was talking about the fact that that leadership capacity needs to be built, which is around creating a culture of leadership. Creating that culture of leadership means that people are going to have to undergo, training, mentorship, coaching, and so on and so forth, and also learning by watching, by doing, and by example of the leaders to also become leaders. So yes, leadership, acquiring the attributes and characteristics of leadership, the attributes of and qualities of leadership, and being able to identify and strengthen and build up the characteristics of a leader in you requires training. And it can be formal, like this process, it can also be informal, through observation, just learning on the work, because the system and mechanisms have been put together in such a manner that as you are doing your work, you are engaging with others, you are actually, the nature of your work and the nature of your job profile, JD, job description, is such that it is actually prompting you to exercise leadership in the areas where you are doing. And so it can be in that sense informal, but it can also be very formal. Then you go and take some courses and the rest of that. And so, yes, but I think the response to that question is that leadership requires training in order for somebody to be able to develop the qualities and the attributes of leadership, and on the characteristics of leadership of a leader. It requires some training, which can be formal, which can be informal. It can be structured, it can be unstructured. Now, having said that, there is also the question about how do we do what now? How do we organize followers to accept your leadership? Is that the question? How do you organize your followers to accept your leadership? Yeah, I mean, and that speaks to those first attributes of leadership. If a leader can envision, can develop a vision, and then can share that vision, there's a difference between when you talk about a vision with people and when you are instructing them to do what you want them to do. So it's a question of also manner of approach. You're being approachable, you're being simple, you're being humble. These are the things that are going to enable you to organize your followers to accept your leadership. But of course, you can also impose fear when people accept your leadership because they fear you. But you see, in that kind of leadership, is not usually productive and fruitful. That means they can also betray you. That means they can also abandon you. But that also means that they don't respect you and that they don't actually believe in the vision. So that's why it's important that a leader internally in mobilizing and organizing followers and other members in an organization must be less coercive and more, of what I can call interactional. Freely interact with your members and be approachable. That's you can't organize followers successfully to believe in what you do without those qualities. Your followers must believe that you actually know, that you have that knowledge, that you know what you are doing, and that a sense of confidence in the fact that you are leading them in the right direction. And all of this cannot come about without confidence building, without interaction, without action between leader and followers, and the things that can be obstacles to interaction. To those kind of interactions are if you lack humility, if you are not simple, if you are not approachable, if you are very temperamental, for example, then that kind of interaction that is confidence building and knowledge sharing cannot occur. And I said that leaders must be firm and leadership must be firm, but leadership, in being firm, leadership must not be dismissive. You cannot be dismissive of the ideas of others, no matter how wrong or not on the right path the ideas may be, because usually for somebody to volunteer an idea means that the person has also done some thinking and some reflection. So it's how do you align that idea now with the vision and with the path that is being taken should be the focus. not to outrightly dismiss, that idea. So just like we said that there are attributes of leadership and characteristics of a leader, there are also those characteristics of a bad leader, being dismissive, being temperamental, And so if we look at that and we now go to Roland and the question of the psychological part, managing the psyche of persons and of leaders, that will be part of the processes and mechanisms that ought to have been put in place within an organization, within a business, within a party, within a movement, within a campaign. Part of the rules of engagement and part of the laws, the bylaws must be such that discourage things that can undermine human capacity, and so on and so forth. Yeah, but the psychological part of it, yes, I mean, you remind me of what they say now that Nigerian leaders are saying that maybe we should be doing psychiatric tests for politicians. And I agree with them because, insane people who are insane also know when people who are insane make recommendations for psychiatric tests, we should actually applaud them and try to give them the psychiatric evaluation and support that they need. But definitely psychology is a huge part of leadership, also a huge part of followership. And let's remember something, that every member of an organization is exercising leadership at one level or the other. Maybe you've been put on a committee or a subcommittee, for example, which you chair, okay? Or maybe, you would, so every member of the organization should have opportunity. The mechanism, the structure must be so that every member can have the opportunity to also exercise, to build capacity for leadership and to exercise leadership. And so that way, we can actually mold what I call the group psychology, which will then help to shape the individual psychology and to repress some of the other bad tendencies from individual psychology. So if you have group, if you build group psychology. The first two questions, the first and the second question are actually very interrelated. And so let's be clear. Why is it that today it's difficult to have this kind of leadership? It's also because today we hardly have leaders. We have people who are in position of authority over others, and it can be formal or informal authority. It can even be spiritual authority. So
can I add one question?
Okay, please do. Please do. Go ahead.
As you're responding, there's something about the leadership quality of former President Jonathan and President Buhari.
Okay.
That's the question in the chat.
Okay. Okay. I will. Okay. So because so as I was saying now, if we look at these and what we've been saying here now, I was saying that one of the things that has happened over in Nigeria in particular, and that would actually link up with the other question that has just added now, is that if you look at Nigeria from independence till now, we will see that there has been a decline. It started as a gradual decline in the quality of leadership, and then it became a precipitous decline in the quality of leadership since independence. And you can mark those qualitative downturns, if you look at it. Let me try and tickle our fancy and our intellectual fancy right now. When you hear those things about, when we say giant of Africa, for example, Nigeria is giant of Africa and all of that, all of these things are based on the things that Nigeria achieved 50, 60 years ago. Certainly not what it is achieving now. It used to be said, just remember, try and remember all those things that they said, Nigeria first in Africa. We did this, we are the first country to do this in Africa. We are the first country to achieve this in Africa. We are the first country to do all of these things in Africa. Just imagine all of that, all of those things that we did, you know? And these were done, first television station in Africa, for example, as at a time when France did not even have a national television station. We had one. Okay? Tallest building in Africa, as at the time when skyscrapers were also just developing and evolving in New York. And then compare that to the quality of the leaders that we have now. Look at the leaders of that time of the immediate independence period. We used to have what was called 5-year national development plans. So this was a country that was planning for itself, you know, that was planning its future. Okay, and budget, annual budgets used to be based on the plan. So we say, just like in your organizations, you have a 5-year strategic plan. So you say in year 1, this is what we want to achieve. This is the resources allocated for it. Year 2, this is what we want to do. That's what now we don't plan. And to add insults to the injury, we now say we do medium-term expenditure framework. An expenditure framework is simply what it is. It is a framework for how you are going to spend money. It is not a plan. It is like you, either you in the household, in the family, the father or the mother, going to the market to shop or going to somewhere to shop. You need things for the family, and you write down the things that you need and the cost. And then you do a budget before you leave the house. That's the way we do budget now, and that's the way we do expenditure framework. Is that a plan? It's not a plan. So part of that thing that you can see, identify as the decline in the quality of leadership of this country is the absence of planning that we now have at the moment. And so the leadership qualities of Jonathan and that of Buhari. Well, let me tell you, I'm not going to tell you who is a better leader amongst the two. What I know is that in terms of the declining in the quality of leadership, there was a decline from the Obasanjo era to the Yar'Adua era, from Yar'Adua to Jonathan, and from Jonathan to Buhari. That decline has continued. Now, qualities of Jonathan. Jonathan was not a firm leader, and he was not a vision. He was not a visionary. He was not a leader that was capable of developing a vision, and he was not a firm leader because he was not visionary. He was not a knowledge generator. And he was not disseminating knowledge. So he was really not providing leadership for his followers, for the people around him, and for the people that he appointed. Sometimes it seemed that they were actually leading him, you know. Then for Buhari, we can look at those first 3 qualities. He's also not a visionary. He's certainly not approachable. And he's also not a knowledge generator. He does not, he's not a leader capable of developing knowledge and capable of then disseminating that knowledge. And more importantly, whereas Jonathan could, under certain circumstances, be teachable, Buhari is not teachable. And these are all the characteristics and attributes, you know, of leadership. And then let's be very clear. None of the leaders that we have had since 1999 is inspiring or motivational. None of them can motivate or inspire people to actually say that this is, and this is different from a cult and hero worship, you know, and cult following. That's different. When people just blindly follow somebody, that's quite different from being able to inspire and motivate them. So the challenge today really is in developing and evolving those characteristics of leadership: humility, simplicity, being approachable. But we even had one now. A leader must also understand that I would say that if one of the attributes of leadership is that everybody must be able to exercise leadership, then one of the characteristics of a leader must also be that a leader must understand that he or she is replaceable. And if you don't have leaders who believe that they are replaceable, if you have leaders who believe that without them, nothing can be done, then you cannot have progress. That's one of the most practical challenge. For example, in Rwanda with Kagame, in Russia with Vladimir Putin, in Belarus now with that man that has been in power for 24 years, and so on and so forth. You must, what are you doing that others cannot do? And if others cannot do it, is that not a sign that you have failed as a leader? So those are the things we need to do. And for me, these qualities and attributes can only be developed in a collective atmosphere and through processes that we are doing like this and we are engaging in like this. But there is no doubt in my mind that there has been a very grave decline in the quality of leadership in the country, and that we need a process and a mission to revive, to reverse that decline and to revive, interest in developing the quality of leadership in the country, because otherwise we are not going anywhere. And let me use one last thing to just give you one example now. So right now, the most topical issue in the country is petrol subsidy removal, so-called petrol subsidy removal, hike in petrol, and electricity tariff. Abi? But we are approaching this. All the arguments are still the same arguments that have been around since 2003 and since 2012. And nothing is being done. If we know, for instance, that one of the strongest components of why we are in this crisis is because we import refined products, why is it that it has proved impossible for us to refine at home, domestically? Why are we as a people interested in simply extracting raw materials, shipping them abroad, and then buying finished products from the raw materials, which is what we are doing with crude? See, having a domestic refining capacity is not just about producing fuel, producing petrol, diesel, and kerosene. It is also that there are other byproducts. In fact, there are 1,000 byproducts of crude oil that are raw materials for other industries. A domestic refining capacity will also give you a capacity for petrochemicals industry, and so on and so forth. This value addition. So we are a country where we have leaders who say that we have an agricultural transformation plan under Jonathan, an agriculture whatever something roadmap under Buhari. But the sole aim of that agricultural plan is to ensure that Nigerian farmers can produce more cassava, more yam, and export yam and cassava. Okay, more money for those farmers and rice, more money for those farmers who are doing this, okay? More resources and revenue to the federal government. But are we not stupid if that is the only reason? We are also in the same country where industrial starch and pharmaceutical starch, major components for pharmaceutical industries and major components for some industries, are being imported. These industrial and pharmaceutical starch are extracted from carbohydrates like cassava and yam. but we are not investing in that. So that's not leadership. Leadership is forward-looking, is problem-solving, is certainly not problem-aggravating. And all of us have to contribute to produce the kind of leadership that the country really needs. And because if we don't get political leadership right, we can't get any other thing right. Businesses will not be able to flourish, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to assume there is no more question because I'm not seeing any other hand. And on that note,
there is a question on the class.
Question on the chat.
No, on ground, one question.
Okay. The physical class. Okay, go ahead. How many of them?
One. Only one.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Mr. Kuduwa. My question is, what is the implication of producing uninformed, half-baked leaders who may not have passed through an informal process like the Center LSD and Kebekache Women Center Development? Ascending to the position of present-day Nigeria.
Well, I think the short answer to your question, when you say what is the implication, the short answer is that we have the kind of situation that we have in the country today, and we have the kind of country that we have. And let me shock you with something. I was doing in the context of trying to respond to some of the arguments of government about why they are increasing hardship of citizens, and when they are talking about revenue shortfall. I was doing a study over the last 2-3 days, and it's not as if I'm doing any new research. What I was just doing was to go over what is in the public space about the revenue situation in the country. And it will shock you to realize that this country has over 300 billion US dollars, 95, that is over 131 trillion naira, in revenue, legitimate legal revenue that it has failed and it is failing to collect. But those, or rather, it's not that it is failing to collect them, but that those revenue are being collected, but they are not being channeled into the appropriate funding channels, the Consolidated Revenue Fund. So that's the short, medium response to your question. That's what you get when you have leaders like this, when you have half-baked leaders like this governing a country with such huge potential, you know? And if you notice something, just like I said, leadership has been declining, but if you notice something, really, there has really been no qualitative difference in visioning, in moving this country forward from the first regime of the Fourth Republic to the current regime of the Fourth Republic. No qualitative difference. It's the same issues we are fighting about. We were fighting about the refineries were not working when Obasanjo was president. The refineries were, we were having challenges with power, this thing. We were not generating enough power, we were not distributing enough power, we were not transmitting enough power. The same problems have been recurring through every successive this thing. So that's what you get when you have leaders that are half-baked and do not have the interest of they seem to have happened on leadership, foisted on the organizations that they are leading. They have not emerged organically from within the organization and from the country. So we suffer now because, and this is also scriptural, people perish for lack of knowledge. We suffer now because we have leaders who are not knowledgeable. And that's and so it goes back to the point you are trying to make, that we need to put in, we need to massively duplicate what Center LSD, Kebekache, and others are doing across the country, so that we can actually produce, a new set of knowledgeable leaders who have the right, qualities and attributes of leadership, and who have been able to refine the characteristics of a leader that are in them. Hello?
Yes. Thank you very much. I think on that note, we can bring the class to a close. Hello.
Thank you.
Fabian and the physical class.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I think we can bring the class to a close, because I assume there's no more question online and there's no more question physical. So, Oga Jaye, I want to really give you virtual hugs for taking time to join us today. And you will join us again next session. We will start the third set in October.
No problem.
So we'll be
I'm available
to have you again. Thank you very much. So I hand over to Fabian.
Class governor. Yes, that's good. Want to be good, it's done. The man has gone. He has gone offline. They are part of the physically wrap up that. Any information for the class? We have a class tomorrow by 11 a.m. The physical class, please. 11 a.m. tomorrow. No, today was okay. Tomorrow is 11 a.m. No. Is it physical or online again? Tomorrow, no online. Okay. Physical is always better than online. Also, for the matriculation now, one place that you can hear graduation down will be available. But they said Friday. I think Friday is too short. I will see how we communicate, get it by Thursday, so that you can make sure no excuse. Let everybody, and as we take, we are pleading again, handle with care, so that we can return to wherever we are renting it from, because we are getting it at a very minimal price compared to other charges. So please handle with care and put this into.
Okay, I just want to. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Those who do not pay complete, the gown will not be given. Please, if you not paid complete, try and balance your payment. Yes. The gown might not be given to you. And you will get it by, if you come here by Thursday, you start getting that Friday might close for something.
Okay, my note is
so let me give this information.
Yes,
Thursday this week.
This week, they will communicate to you.
Yes.
It's in as much as the center doesn't want to let anybody behind. And one is another opinion that people should be serious, because we are talking of leadership. I know that some people is like prepare the food. As you prepare the sample, food is ready. That's the time they will come and eat.
Go ahead, sir. He was showing me something.
No. Also,
Yeah, I was just trying to confirm.
So, as I was saying, some of us are like, when people cook, as that cook at the station, food is ready, they come and eat. That one does not help us as leaders, and also to not help the center. So, sir, I will suggest that in subsequent batches, there should be strict measure to checkmate those unserious students who are like those when food is ready, that is when they come and eat. And as leaders of the group, we have also received an online conversation, which they think that we are working against a lot of graduates. Yes, but we always refer them to the appropriate water. It's our opinion that everybody should graduate, but we should put more seriousness so that we don't come out for this will not so pass through. That is just my opinion.
Thank you very much. That one is for the establishment, like the criteria they give to us is what we are following. And some people have said it will not start because besides all of them have gotten their admission. But I know admission letter is not admission. So as many who have despised those requirements from the beginning to this moment, what Pudua is trying to say, they're only trying to show up in the field of finishing. I told you so many places are places I encountered this. I didn't see them from nowhere. So if you try to make it like this to continue in the future, where people will say, don't worry, that's when it's about like ending, you cannot just to pay whatever you want to pay. Pay your time, you can take the job in the paper. If you do it like that, people abuse quality leadership that the country and the sector.
Let me kindly respond to that. When we started the school, we had 262 spaces that registered for the program. We all know that the hall, there was no space for the hall. So gradually the number deflected.
No, it was not. We didn't start with that. The people that started with on your approaching was limited. It was on the day when it wanted to be Dr. Chide said he increased the more person.
The actual number that picked before was 84.
Yes.
Before the graduation and matriculation.
Yes.
But after that day, he gave us the opportunity because the lecture did not begin yet. It was the problem that the lecture, so he gave us that platform 1 month straight. And we should still open the application. So we opened it and we ended up with 262 persons. Yes. So after that first month, reduced. I can bring the attendance that you see. Reducing, and we ended up with about 163. Before the coronavirus, that was March. We had about 94. So after the people still dropped. The only person that I know that have given small opportunity because of the group work are those who have attended classes up to March. That was the only baseline factor that they gave me that we can pardon those people because some people were not able to attend online. So we gave people that attended to March that grace. That's why some people say we need completed on the group. So I think like I have not given anybody that have not attended any like they have not satisfied 70%, but I can do the attendance and share. I am very sure about that. 70%. There are some people that have reached 70%, but I've seen it on the group. There's one man actually that has joined the group. I don't want to mention his name. He's on the group platform and he has joined online. But throughout the group works, he did not respond to any message, he did not respond to anything, and his name has been dropped. 2%. But they were on this class right now. So those people, they are just enjoying the lecture and the privileges, but they will not be graduating. That's just the truth.
So have you ever displayed the list?
It's online. I posted it online now. Yes. And I believe they've seen the list. Because I also monitor people that have viewed my messages. So I see they've seen the list. I've asked the group leader what is where they will respond. He said no. Also, actually, I should also be
And it's not you as a
but
person.
they have been online on classes. They don't come physically, but when I face the group links, like online meetings, they attend. So those people are showing that they don't want to enjoy the class. So they think I cannot put their name on this. You need to log the group platform. If I have any issues, message me and I will explain to you. People who are not on the platform. That's why I gave that list. That's the final list. That's the final. So you confirm your name is correct. Sign. So I hope we are all clear. Any other information or comments, you can put on the list. Okay. No, it's not on that same issue. So please, any other information?
Are we still doing? Sorry, I'm asking. Are we doing another presentation on the graduation day? No. That's ended.
Tomorrow, please, the class is composed with physical. That's the last class. Tomorrow, please, let's
let's go to the class together. In Jesus' name. Let's thank God for making it possible for us to be here. And for those who also catch up online, giving us the opportunity to have a successful one today. Open your heart and say, God, we thank you. We give you praise for making it possible for us to have followed up to this point. It's not by our strength, it's not by our power, but by your making and by your divine ability to each and every one of us here. Some of us don't even know how that spirit that we are, how we all got here. But we say thank you. Thank you, Lord. In Jesus' name. Let's commit tomorrow class to God's hand. Lord, tomorrow shall also bring us here, also protect us online. We ask to make it possible because they say you know like that. We ask the Lord, thank you for tomorrow class, bring us here for tomorrow, and help us to finish well. Because we said they cannot finish better than the beginning. Lord, help me to finish well. Open your mouth and begin to pray. Lord, I ask for grace. We ask for grace. And everyone of us well. Give us understanding, strength, grace, provision. In the name of Jesus. Lord, as